Okay. I feel insecure about my skin tone.
I don't know if you noticed, but I'm quite on the dark side, dark side of like the spectrum. So like growing up, I don't know, people kind of not really directly bullied me, but suggested, oh, maybe you should try some like skin whitening products and stuff like that. To the point that I think it was like before middle school. One day I was so fed up with it. Uh, I spent like an hour in the shower just rubbing soap on my skin. And then after that, by the time that I got out, like even when I like rinsed myself off, there was still some soap on my skin.
Growing up here when I was younger, I definitely thought that like I I should have been like whiter. I should have been like the other girls who were like in the media who were like the eye of like everyone's affection, and it didn't lead me to also like try skin whitening products in the Philippines and bring it over here. And then when I grew older, I realized that people actually want to look like me. Like a lot of celebrities nowadays, like try to make their skin darker, try to become more ethnically like ambiguous. And then I just realized that like it doesn't really matter, I guess, because I mean it does matter because of how you're perceived, but it doesn't matter to me at least like what my skin looks like in other people's eyes anymore. What matters is that people see me for more than that. If that makes sense.
I feel close to my Filipino culture. Move around, it's okay. Are you in between?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I grew up in a really white town, so growing up, I didn't really know any other Filipinos, especially when I was growing up. So obviously that was a very formative time in my life. So I didn't feel very connected to my culture just because I didn't have a lot of exposure outside of my family or my family friends. And then just growing up, because of that, especially since like the culture surrounding me was just like very white. I kind of tried to push it away because I wanted to fit in more, especially because I was kind of quirky as a kid. So that like made me like want to fit in that aspect even more. But then like as I grew up, I'm kind of hovering between like disagree and somewhat disagree because like as I grew up, I realized like that kind of sucks, and I really want to embrace my culture, so I've been trying to connect more with it, but I still feel like because of all that time I spent disconnected from it, that I'm still like kind of not at that stage. Yeah.
I also grew up in a very white town. I'm from Naperville, Illinois. It's like probably one of the most like, whitest towns in Illinois. But I didn't have a lot of Filipino friends, nor like not even Asian friends, and so I did feel disconnected. But then every time I went home, my family consistently practices those Filipino culture, our Filipino culture. We eat like Filipino food every single day, and then like my mom speaks Tagalog. Like I can't speak Tagalog, but my mom speaks Tagalog, and so like although it's not within like where I go to school or even in my neighborhood, it was always in my family. And then especially since I got here and I just tried to like make more friends that were Filipino, I felt even closer because like I'm able to relate to people who had like experience similar to mine, and so I guess and then I've been trying to like join more like 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 Filipino dances, all that stuff. And so I'm just like slowly getting closer to it.
I'm on the regular side of like disagreeing with the statement. Grew up in Chicago. I had a lot of like Filipino family members like living in the same like city. I wasn't really in an environment where I was like discouraged to like be like Filipino around other people. But I think what did hold me back was kind of like participating in like the history and the language. Like my family's from Davao, they speak Bisaya, so I don't speak Bisaya, but I understand Bisaya. But the thing is, a lot of people know Tagalog, and that's like what most of the media is. And it's hard to like feel connected if I can't like understand, and I have to like learn a whole different like dialect, and it's just really like frustrating. And I want to have the time to learn a language, but not everyone has the time to just learn a language. And yeah, it's also just being like Filipino American is a very unique experience. And then even as someone who like had the privilege of going to the Philippines like a lot as a kid, it was still something like I was still different. And when I'd like speak English, everyone would just be like, "No, please," and I'd be like.
I think that Filipinos are well represented in the media and the workplace overall.
Well, I do notice like a lot of representation now in the media, like especially within children's shows. Like I've noticed, I watch a lot of Cartoon Network, so it's like I noticed with Greg with the Creek, there was like this episode where it's like the mom is Filipino and then like the grandma and Lola speaks Bisaya too, like that's my only language. Also within Steven Universe, there's like this one part where it's like they make an ube cake together, and like I feel like within the past decade or so, it's like you start to hear more and more about Filipinos, and it's like especially with TikTok and other social media. You just start to see more Filipinos around social media and stuff like that. So it's like you finally get to be seeing the people that are like you. But like at the same time, you don't really see a lot of that within movies and TV shows. Like especially growing up, like I didn't realize I was Filipino until I was until I was like in 7th grade. Or sorry, no, when I was 7, because I barely saw anyone outside of my family who was Filipino, which is weird, especially if you watch a lot of TV, cartoons, all that stuff when you're a kid. So it's like. It's gonna be coming soon, but like in the past, no.
Well, I do agree with what you said about there being more of an increase in representation, especially lately. Like you saw the new Spider-Man movie, you see Ned and his family, and then I guess Raya and the Last Dragon, except that was more Southeast Asia in general. But I still would think that there's a lot more progress that could be made. I guess that's kind of like a pessimistic view on it. Like, yeah, there's like some little bits here and there, but I guess maybe it's just what I'm consuming, but I honestly don't really see a lot of media representation where like Filipinos are more like side characters, or it's more like a side topic, if you know what I mean. Like there's rare or less often Filipinos in like the main roles, in my opinion, which is why I'm still on the like the stronger, like more strongly disagree, just because like yeah, it's there, but it's not super blatantly obvious to me.
I feel a sense of solidarity with other Asians, even if they aren't necessarily Filipino.
Okay. Well, like I said before, I grew up in a really like white neighborhood. I was always surrounded by white people, and then so it was always assumed that I was a different kind of Asian because like the people that I grew up with weren't really aware of like Filipino people. Like they only knew like I was always labeled as Chinese or Korean, and so I always thought of something like that. That I think a lot of us East Asians go through the same thing, that when we're surrounded by people who don't understand like our culture, like our East Asian culture, they assume already. And so I just find the solidarity with other Asians because I know that we probably went through the same thing.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I also, like I said before, I also grew up in a predominantly white town. And I guess there were like a decent amount of Asians, but they were almost completely East Asian or South Asian. So in that sense, I guess I kind of like inserted myself into that kind of setting because I was just like, if there was no Filipinos, then I was just gonna, you know, go for the next best thing, which was just Asians in general. So then, of course, like it's like around the same area, so then there were a lot of cultural similarities and similarities in the way that we grew up. So, like, I do feel solidarity with other Asians, even when they're not specifically Filipino, just because of, even like, if you go back into all these different countries' histories, like there's like a lot of like interplay in between the different countries, like they've influenced the others, generally due to colonization of some sort, unfortunately, but that still results in similarities in cultures that go back throughout history that can really bring us together.